This week, two nonpartisan organizations released their recommendations to the legislature on how to fix the deepening budget crisis. Some of the suggestions have been around for more than a decade, but this year there will be increased pressure on lawmakers to listen and act to begin fixing the problem.
For the last 7 years, state government's budget hole has been growing, beginning at just over $100 million to last year's $1.3 billion shortfall. A few days ago, Senate President Pro Tem Mike Schultz warned that a revenue failure is a real possibility for this year. The warning sounded again this week, first from the dean of the UCO Business College, Mickey Hepner.
It does look like that a revenue failure is likely to come in the next few months, and so that is troublesome.
Hepner is on the executive committee of the Oklahoma Academy, a grassroots nonpartisan organization that produces recommendations every year for lawmakers on ways to improve services and the budget of state government. The next voice to warn of a revenue shortfall is David Blatt, executive director of the Oklahoma Policy Institute.
Last month, the Board of Equalization projected that for the full year, we'd be at 4.4% below the estimate, so just under that 5% threshold. But if the situation worsens at all, we could be facing another revenue failure this year.
David Blatt was speaking at the OPI's fourth annual budget summit, attended this year by a standing room-only crowd of over 400 people. Blatt says for too long, policymakers have used the excuse that Oklahoma is a poor state, and that's why we rank so far behind other states in almost every category.
If you look at per capita income, Oklahoma ranks right in the middle of the pack, $43,350 a year. We're ahead of Florida, Ohio, Oregon, Missouri, many other states that are not seen as poor states.
Blatt says the simple fact is Oklahoma scores so poorly in so many categories because of decisions by public officials.
I'd argue that we fare so poorly in so many areas, in large part, not entirely, but in large part, because of decisions that our policymakers make, especially with regards to taxes and budget.
At the Oklahoma Academy, the list of recommendations ring very similar to those from the OPI on how to fix state government's ongoing budget hole. John Harper is strategic chair of the Academy. The Academy believes there needs to be more transparency in the budget process, including a 5-day period for everyone, including the public, to look over the spending blueprint before lawmakers begin to vote.
There ought to be annual budgeting and then maybe a biannual policy session. So it's really trying to take the idea that we have to look at this budget and it has to have some focus, but maybe take some of those other policy issues off the table.
Academy chairman is former Congressman Dan Boren.
Because we are in such a tough budget situation, setting up a framework where we can not only have to make these short-term decisions, but long-term sustainable budgets so that we can fund mental health, so that we can fund transportation, so that we can do all these.
Oklahoma currently lags behind the rest of the nation in funding for just about everything.
We spend less in almost all the major categories: education, health and social services, public safety, the environment and housing, everything except transportation, according to data compiled by the U.S. Census Bureau.
The Academy's chairman-elect is David Stewart. This year, the Academy is making a concerted effort to get lawmakers to take their recommendations seriously.
We will be holding community meetings, receptions, listening sessions across the state to raise awareness, share the goals, and to encourage involvement. We will be distributing the strategic action goals to every legislator's office, the governor's office, the lieutenant governor's office, and the state treasurer's office.
And some of the financial pressure on lawmakers may be easing up. UCO's Mickey Hepner believes the recession the state has been in for the last 18 months may actually be nearing an end.
So at least as we start looking beyond this year's budget, we start looking beyond the next few months, things are starting to pick up, and hopefully our legislators will be able to look at some long-term solutions as well as the short-term problems.
Economic experts predict unless state government does something to fix the structural deficit, by 2030, the yearly budget shortfall will be $2 billion. And like other budget watchers, David Blatt says the way to fix this budget mess is stop the automatic reductions in the income taxes, reverse past income tax cuts, and restore a higher tax rate for higher incomes.
We need to curb unnecessary tax breaks, the tax breaks for capital gains, the tax breaks for oil and gas production, for wind production, and others definitely need to be scaled back or eliminated.
OPI's David Blatt senses a changing mood at 23rd and Lincoln, as expressed in part by Senator A.J. Griffin.
I hope all Oklahomans are as hopeful as I am that we're at a place where we will really make changes in our system so that all Oklahomans have the opportunity to hit on all cylinders and to be healthy and productive in our society.
So, for the first time in nearly 7 years, legislators may be beginning to realize they don't have a spending problem, they have a revenue problem.
According to Oklahoma Senate leaders, everything will be on the table when they start tackling another huge budget hole of nearly $900 million this session. Members of the Senate Republican caucus held news conferences in Tulsa and Oklahoma City this week to outline their 2017 legislative agenda. Senate President Pro Tem Mike Schultz says the Senate will continue to review business incentives and will likely target the renewable energy credit afforded the wind energy sector. More taxation will be looked at as well.
Broadening the sales tax base, taxing services. If you look at our surrounding states, there's a lot of things that they charge sales tax on that we don't. And that is certainly one of the items that's up for discussion. Cigarette tax was brought forth a year ago, another thing that will be on the table for discussions this year.